We're going on a road trip in Southern Virginia. Come on, let's go. Alright everyone, today we are doing US Highway 58. US 58 is a US highway mostly in Virginia, with like the last half mile being in Tennessee. It also goes through some beautiful scenery in the Appalachian Mountains, and then through central Virginia, and then finally ending at Virginia Beach at a junction with US Highway 60. So let's get started with US Highway 58. If you've been enjoying my highways content or any of my other content, be sure to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button so you're notified of all my future highways videos. And guess what? I'm now open to extra requests. All of the future highways I'm going to be doing are listed down in the description below. So if you want any extra requests for the future highways, be sure to look down in the description and put your request down in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to shout you out. Let's get started with the highway. As you can see here, US 38 mostly parallels the southern Virginia border, with a little bit going into Tennessee right at the Tennessee and Kentucky border. So that we'll be talking about eastbound US 58. So we begin here on US 25E, and US 58 is signed for Cumberland Gap and Jonesville. Why Tennessee? That is a bad choice. That should be Bristol, Virginia, or Bristol, Tennessee. Do you know what's in Jonesville, Tennessee? Nothing, so why is it signed? And Tennessee doubles down on Jonesville, as our only mileage sign in Tennessee is Jonesville, Virginia, which is 34 miles away. What are you doing, Tennessee? Shortly after, we're entering into the state of Virginia, and we have this Virginia state line here, and a Welcome to Virginia sign just a little bit up the road. Also, we're now going to be turning onto a road called Wilderness Road, so that's cool. And our first mileage sign in Virginia, which is 10 miles into the state, it has Bristol on the bottom line at 90 miles away. That's what should have been signed at 25E in US 58 Junction. And here in Jonesville, we get another mileage sign, and Bristol is still on the bottom line at 66 miles away. Also in Jonesville, we meet US 58 alternate and Virginia Highway 70. US 58 alternate is a good route, but Virginia 70 is not, so I don't know why Jonesville is signed. Now we mean US Highway 421 and US 421 and 58 are going to make concurrent with each other as we head towards Bristol. And here's some beautiful scenery in the Appalachian Mountains along US 58 and 421. And we also get a very cool overlook into a massive valley here on US 58. And this is right before the US 23, US 421, and 58 junction. We pass by this train museum, so if you like trains, then this place is for you. Now we're meeting up with US 23, and US 23 and 58 and 421 are going to be concurrent with each other as we head towards Gate City. Here's US 23 splitting off from 58 and 421, and 58 and 421 is now heading towards Bristol. Here in the Bristol area, US 58 is actually joining Interstate 81 North. It is signed for Roanoke, while 421 is signed south for Bristol, which is absolutely correct. And here's our reassurance shield, and US 58 is now joining with Interstate 81. Here's Interstate 381 in the Bristol area, which actually takes you over to US 11 and US 19. And here's exit 19 off of Interstate 81, and US 58 is going to be joining US Highway 11, and we're signed for Abington and Damascus. Why is Damascus on there? That should be. And here's where US 11 splits off from US 58 to head to you-know-where if you watched my US 11 video, while US 58 heads east towards Damascus and Hillsville. Here in Damascus, we're meeting Virginia Highway 91. And in the Damascus area, we now get Galax on the bottom line at 55 miles away. That's alright, but you can also do Hillsville, which is just 10 miles up the road from there. Here in Independence, we're meeting US 21, and US 221 is going to be joining US 58 as we head towards Hillsville. And in fact, Hillsville is actually in our secondary sign, which is 29 miles away, and then we're having Martinsville, which is 98 miles away. Here's Interstate 77, and it's signed north for Wytheville and south for Charlotte. 77 signs south for Charlotte is a great choice by Virginia. Withville is so you can do Charleston. Interstate 77, we now get Hillsville on the top line, which is 2 miles away. Then Martinsville is where we meet US 220, which is 71 miles away, and then Danville, which is 99 miles away. Wow, Virginia. Here in the Hillsville area, US 58 is splitting off from US 221 to head towards Martinsville and Danville, which are correct choices. And here's where we meet US 52, which is assigned bad for Hillsville and Fancy Gap. You know what that should be, Virginia? That should be Withville and Winston-Salem, not Hillsville and Fancy Gap. Why, Virginia? Now we're meeting US 220 in the Martinsville area, and US 58 is going to be joining US 220 south to head towards Greensboro and Danville. Here's where US 58 splits off from US 220, and US 220 is signed south for Greensville, and 58 is signed east for Gainesville, respectively. Once we leave US 220, South Boston becomes our primary, which is 52 miles away. And here in Danville, where we US 58 is splitting off from its business route, which takes us to Greensboro and South Boston. And sadly, in the Danville area, we have no direct access to US 311. I mean US 29, which takes us south to Greensboro. And the cool thing about this junction here is that it's directly on the North Carolina and Virginia line. So the 29 South ramp actually enters into North Carolina. And here's where US 58 splits off from US 29 and joins US 360 as we head towards South Boston. Like a reoccurring theme, now we get South Boston as our secondary, and then South Hills now as our primary, which is 75 miles away. Now we're entering into the South Boston area. Hey, wait a minute, didn't I already do 3 highways that went through Boston? Well, guess now US 58 joins that because we're in South Boston, and everyone knows where the real Boston is. It's in Kentucky, along US 62, definitely not in Massachusetts. But here in South Boston, we're meeting US 501, and US 58 and 360 is going to be continuing east of here. Now here is US 360 splitting off from US 58, and US 58 is going to continue east towards South Hill. Now we're meeting US 15, just west of South Hill, and it's signed for Clarksville and Oxford. Now and US 15 joins US 58 for a short concurrency, and this is where US 58 is splitting off from US 15, and it's heading east towards Boynton and South Hill. Now I'm in US 1 here in the South Hill area, and we get to see that wonderful mileage sign from the US 1 video once again. South Hill is on the top line, Richmond for US 1, and Norfolk now is our primary for US 58. And this is where US 1 is splitting off from US 58, as US 58 now is heading towards Emporia and Norfolk. Here in the South Hill area, we're meeting Interstate 85, which is signed south for Durham, which is absolutely correct. And north for Petersburg. Honestly, that should be Richmond, not Petersburg, because you're angling towards Richmond. And here in Emporia, we're meeting Interstate 95, and 95 is signed south for Rocky Mount, while 95 is signed north for Richmond, which is absolutely correct and awesome. And that Rocky Mount sign is I prefer to see Raleigh on there because you need a whole bunch of different highways that take you to Raleigh. And plus Raleigh is North Carolina's capital, so I'd rather see that on Interstate 95 than Rocky Mount. Here's the Cracker Barrel that I visited in Emporia on one of my many trips back home from my grandparents when I lived up in Fredericksburg. And still in Emporia, we actually have this bear statue right here that is right next to this long Wendy's sign. Because if you zoom out on Google Street View, it's actually a picture of a Wendy's sign. I wonder if Wendy's is promoting this bear to say, come to Wendy's if you have a roaring appetite. Now we're meeting US 301 here in Emporia, and US 301 is signed for Emporia because it goes through downtown Emporia. While US 58 is going to be continuing east of here towards Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Now we're meeting US Highway 258, which actually links US 58 and 158. Now we're meeting US Highway 13, and US 13 is going to be joining US 58 as we head towards Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Here are meeting US 460 once again. Extra request, it was made by Real Tony 123. He wanted to see the US 58, Interstate 64, 264, and 664 junction, where US 58 is signed east for Newport News and Hampton, while 264 is signed east for Portsmouth, Norfolk, and Virginia Beach. So thank you for him for suggesting this junction. Also, US 13 is going to be joining Interstates 264 and 64, while 58 is going to be joining Interstate 664. And once we leave Interstate 664, our first major junction after that is US Highway 17. And now we're entering a bridge tunnel to go under one of the sounds and onto an island. And our first major junction out of the bridge tunnel is US Highway 460, once again. And here's where we're going under Interstate 64, and sadly we don't have direct access to the highway, but we do have direct access to Interstate 264, which eventually takes you over to Interstate 64. And once we parallel 264 for a while, we eventually end up here at a junction with US 60 and the eastern terminus of US 38 here in Virginia Beach. So with that, me turning around and doing westbound US 58. So we begin here on US 60 and at 32nd Street. This is where technically US 58 begins, but I couldn't find any reassurance shields. But once we leave out of downtown Virginia Beach area, we get a reassurance shield for US 58, and it's also to West Interstate 264. Now remaining Interstate 264, which is signed west for Norfolk, and US 58 just gets west for Virginia Beach Boulevard, sadly, in no control city. Now I mean just Highway 13, and it's just for military highway, no control city here. You also get this nice US 58 west shield. Now I mean US 460 once again. And we're re-entering that bridge tunnel to go under the sound once again. Now we're meeting US 17 on the other side of the bridge tunnel. And here we're meeting the 664, 64, and 264 junction, and 664 signed north for Newport News and Richmond, while South 664 signed for Norfolk and Virginia Beach. And on 664 itself, US 58 is signed west for Suffolk, along with US 13 and US 460. Now here's US 460 splitting off from US 58, and it's signed west for Petersburg. And this is where US 13 is splitting off from US 58, and it's signed south for Hosky, Edenton, while US 58 is now signed west for Franklin and Emporia. Now we're meeting US 258 once again, which takes in our first mileage sign for westbound US 58. We get Cortland on the top line at 3 miles away and Emporia at 31. Here we're meeting US 301 in the Emporia area once again. Now we're meeting Interstate 95, which gets the same control cities as it did as we were heading on eastbound US 58. Exit the Emporia area, we get South Hill on the second line at 17 miles away, and then Danville on the bottom line at 92 miles away, so that's a long distance. Here we are in South Hill, and we're meeting Interstate 85, which is signed south for Durham and north for Petersburg, respectively. And now we're meeting US 1 once again, and US 1 is going to be joining US 58 as we head towards Danville. And our mileage sign, once US 1 joins us, we get Boydton on the top line at 13 miles away, Clarksville, which is where we meet US 15, 23 miles away, and we gain here's where US 1 splits off from US 58 to head south towards Raleigh. Here in Clarksville, we're meeting US 15 once again, and US 58 and 15 are going to be joining a short concurrence with each other, and we're now signed southwest for South Boston and Danville. Here's a nice view of the Roanoke River as US 58 and 15 are crossing it. And here's where US 15 is splitting off from US 58 and signed for Clarksville and Oxford. Once US 58 splits off from US 15, we get a good mileage sign here, South Boston on the top line, Danville as our secondary, and then Martinville as our primaries. Now we're meeting US 360 in the South Boston area. And now we're meeting US 29, we're going to be joining with US 29 South, and we're signed southwest for Greensboro and Martinsville. You also get this really weird exit 1/3 of a mile distance. Now here's where US 29 splits off from US 58, and sadly US 58 gets no control city here on this sign, but US 29 does. But when we actually meet that exit, US 58 is signed west for Martinsville, so that's good. Here in the Martinsville area, we're meeting US Highway 220, and US 220 North is going to be joining US 58. And here's where US 58 splits off from US 220, which US 220 gets the awesome city of Roanoke, while 58 gets west for Stewart? I've never even heard of Stewart, Virginia before I did this video. Apparently that's where we meet Virginia Highway 8, but who's going to be taking Virginia Highway 8 to North Carolina 8? That should be Hillsville or Galax, not Stewart. We are meeting the Blue Ridge Parkway, and sadly this is not on mainline US 58. This is actually on US 58 Business, which is a road that goes through one of these small unincorporated communities, and it is not signed as a primary on US 58, so that's good. And here in the Hillsville area, we're meeting US 52 once again, and it gets the bad control cities of Fancy Gap and Hillsville. We're already in Hillsville, why not Withville? Now we're reuniting with US 221, and US 58 and 221 is heading west towards Galax, which I think is a good choice because it's one of the major towns that you're going to be passing through for a while before you hit Abington. Now we're meeting Interstate 77 once again, and it just gets the same control cities as going eastbound on US 58. Now we're meeting US 21, and 221 is going to be joining US 21. And US 58 is going to be continuing west towards Abingdon. And in fact, Abingdon is our secondary at 65 miles away, and Bristol now appears on our mileage sign at 79 miles away. Now we're meeting US Highway 11. And this is where US 58 is leaving US 11 to head southwest towards Bristol. And once we got onto Interstate 81, we're actually going to be following US 58 alternate because it actually goes to the mountains and it meets US 19 and US 23. So here's the exit for US 58 alternate, and it's time for Abingdon and South Holston Dam. I'm guessing that's for Virginia Highway 75. Here joining US 11 once again, and US 11 and 58 are going to be heading into downtown Abingdon. Here's a nice view of downtown Abingdon, and as you can see here, US 58 is splitting off from US 11 to head towards US 19. Now we're joining US 19 just west of Abingdon. And this is when US 58 joins US 19, and we get Hansonville on the top line at 12 miles away. And Norton and Bluefield are for US 19 control cities, but apparently US 19 has left the chat and it's just US 58. Here's US 58 alternate splitting off from US 19. And here's a mileage sign just for US 58 alternate alone. St. Paul is on the top line at 15 miles away. Norton is 35 and Jonesville is 79. Now Jonesville would be a good thing to sign here on US 58 alternate because it's an alternate route of US 58. Now we're meeting US Highway 23 here in the Appalachian Mountains, and US 58 and 23 are going to be concurrent with each other. Man, here's a good stunning view on US 58 alternate and US 23. Here in the Big Stone Gap area, US 58 alternate is splitting off from US 23 to head into downtown Big Stone Gap. Here in the 404 Cafe and Creamery here in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. Sadly, we can't go closer up to the building because there is no street view there. But honestly, that looks like a place that I'd like to visit one day. And now we're joining US 421 out here in one of these small mountain towns as we head. And here's where US 58 is splitting off from US 421. To head west towards Jonesville and Cumberland Gap. Honestly, on that bottom line, that should be Millsboro, Kentucky, not Cumberland Gap. Now we're reuniting with US 58 original US 58, and US 58 is still heading west towards Cumberland Gap. Like I said earlier, that should be Middlesboro, Kentucky, not Cumberland Gap. And then about 35 and a half miles later, we're re-entering into the state of Tennessee. Enter into Cumberland Gap, remaining US 25E, and US 25E is signed north for Middlesboro, Kentucky, while 25E is signed south for Heritage and Tazewell. Honestly, US 58 should have been signed west for Middlesboro all the way from the Interstate 81 split, because Middlesboro, Kentucky has 10,000 people, and that's where 25E is going towards. But I don't know why they signed Cumberland Gap. That's not a good choice. We end US 58 and move on to the places I'll go on US 58. So these are all the places that I'd visit if I ever was on the rest of US 58, just besides Emporia, Virginia. So these are all the places that I'd visit on US 58. I'd actually visit the Cumberland Gap State Park in Tennessee, and then the Fannin Train Museum at the 58, 421, and 23 Junction, and then the 404 Cafe Creamery in Big Stone Gap, and then the actual city of Bristol, like I mentioned in my US 11 video, and then Grayson Highlands State Park along US 58 in southwestern Virginia. And I actually like to visit the town of Hillsville and see all those cool signs. And then the city of Danville itself, and then the town of South Boston, so I can say I've been to Boston, and then revisit Emporia and revisit that Cracker Barrel and actually visit that Wendy's. I actually like to visit Norfolk and Virginia Beach because I've actually never been to those places. So that ends US Highway 58. Thank y'all so much for watching this episode of US Highway 58. I hope you guys learned something new about this highway, and I hope you found some cool places that you'd like to visit along this route someday. So with that, my next few highways are going to be the 2018 Vail trip, the route that I took from Fredericksburg, Virginia all the way up to Illinois to visit my family back in 2018. That's going to be for my channel's 3rd year anniversary. And after that, I'm going to be doing the Super 200. As you can see here, it consists of these 4 state highways and just the eastbound portion. And after that, I'm going to be doing US 27's route through Michigan before it was truncated to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.